In this video, you'll learn a super quick trick that uses split processing. It's really fast and easy to do, and in the right context, it can instantly improve your kick or your bass, and even the tom, snare, and a bunch of other stuff. So if you want your kick or bass to sound powerful, but at the same time stand out on small speakers, keep watching. But first, download the free low-end cheat sheet to make sure you get the kick and bass right every single time. There's a link in the bio or on screen now. Hey guys, how's it going? Rob here from Musician on a Mission, and today I've got a bit more of an advanced technique for you. So quick disclaimer, make sure you have the basics down first before you think about something like this, split processing or parallel compression or other interesting techniques like that. Now, this split processing trick is simply the act of splitting a source, whether that's a kick or a snare, by frequency. So we could have a crossover at say 200 hertz, and then we split into two channels. So we have the top end on one channel and the bottom end on another channel. You could split into more, you could split into 3 or 4, but I normally just do this with 2. So this is how you actually set it up in a mix. Well, first of all, we need to take our original kick channel and we need to duplicate it. So if we go to the project view, highlight this, and in Logic we can hold command while we click this, and it will also copy the audio. So we can call this one kick high. Whoop, not kick Hugh. Who's Hugh? Definitely don't kick him. And kick low. Now what we want to do is actually filter these. So we've just got a duplicate of the kick at the moment. So we want to take this one and add a low pass filter at around 200 hertz. So we've only got everything below 200 hertz. And then on the other one, we want to do the opposite. So we add a high pass filter at 200 hertz. So now when we listen to these together, it sounds like the normal kick drum. That's both of them, and this is with just the original one with no filtering. So as you can hear, it's pretty much the same. So now that you have these two separate channels, let me give you some ideas for what you could actually do with this. Here we've done it on a kick drum. So on the low channel, maybe we could add some heavy compression to make sure that the lows are really consistent. They're providing a nice solid foundation to the track, but at the same time, we leave the highs uncompressed, which means the actual dynamics of the kick drum are still going to be there. If it goes to a soft part in the song, it's going to actually sound quieter, and in the chorus, it's going to be boom, boom, boom. It's going to sound louder, but the low end just sounds consistent, and we can heavily compress it to achieve that effect. Then what about some EQ? Well, that means we can leave this low end as it is, just maybe no EQ at all, but on the top end, we might want to just add a little bump to help the beat to come out. And this means now that low end isn't going to be affected by that. Now, I find myself using EQ with this trick more often on bass guitar if I want to have, again, the low end more consistent, and then I want to bring out the upper mids to help it cut through on this higher channel. And then you can go crazy with it. You could try adding saturation. Again, I do this all the time. So here I'll boost the upper mids to help it cut through in small speakers, and then add saturation only to the high channel so that we're not saturating this low end. This is nice and solid and consistent and unprocessed and clean. And then this high channel, we can add some upper mids. We can make it dirty with some saturation, make it sound really nice and juicy, and have fun with it. You can even throw effects on this channel. So I could use reverb only on the high channel, so the kick low stays without reverb, nice and center and focus, but we still have reverb on the kick on this high channel. So now I'm going to walk you through a few examples of actually applying this in a mix. So let's just get rid of this boost, and we're going to start with the kick drum here because I've already set that up. So first, let's take a listen to the track that we're working with. The artist is David Tayo. The track is called It's So Easy to Love You, and it's kind of an indie folk vibe to it.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink.
And let's just check a couple of references to kind of tune your ears in. So I've got a Van Joyce and a Mumford & Sons song. Of course, obvious choices to go for. Let's have a quick comparison.
Easy to love you. Seen this all before. Weep for yourself, my man, you'll know. I would run out of ink. Seen this all before. Outside, I wanna be your left hand. It's so easy to love you. And I got a lump in my throat, 'cause you're gonna.
So I don't know if you notice any stark differences there comparing them. There's a big difference in energy. The other two tracks have got a bit of a higher tempo, a bit more energy. So we can try and add some more energy in the mixing process, but it is a slightly different vibe to it. And the big thing that I notice is in these two tracks, Van Joy and Mumford & Sons, the kick drum is so prominent. It's providing most of that low end. It's really loud. There's actually a bit of reverb on it too. Focus on that kick drum as I flick back and forth between these two references.
But it was not your fault but mine. And it
the other track. Not as loud, but it's providing a lot of that low end foundation. There's not much going on down there. So right now I think the kick in our track sounds a little bit thin and wimpy.
Easy to love you. It's
there, but it's really not adding much low end. So let's start playing around with this. Well, the first thing we can do is just compress the low end and not the top end. So you might be wondering at this point, well, how's that any difference using a multiband compressor? And you'd be right, there is no difference. If all you want to do is compress a certain range of frequencies like below 200 hertz differently to say above 200 hertz, then you can just do that with a multiband compressor. The benefit of this trick is we can then add EQ, saturation, etc., and we have a bit more control over it. So it really just depends on the context. What I'm going to do here though is use a compressor to just really tighten up this low end channel to get it pumping in the mix.
easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of reasons. It's so easy to love you. And when all the pages of our lives are turned and all the words are through being written.
So what I'm doing here is just tweaking it until I can hear that it's punching through a little bit more and it's also more consistent. That's the main thing we're going for here, is consistency, and just the act of adding compression is going to make it more consistent. So I've got quite a high ratio, quite a lot of compression going on, making up the gain and just tweaking the attack and the release till it's punching through the mix a little bit more. So this is before.
Easy to love you.
And this is after.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink.
So that's better, it sounds more consistent. Now I'm also going to use Waves R bass on this because it's sounding a bit thin, and rather than just using an EQ to boost 50 hertz, for example, which wouldn't work that well because there's probably not much going on there, I can use something like R bass, really cheap plugin. I use this all the time to actually add in new harmonics on the low end. So this is what it does. If we solo the kick, this is without it, and this is with, and I'm just going to turn off that reverb now. So you can hear it adding that low end. Let's just solo just the low end channel. So this is without, this is with. Now that's way over the top. So we're going to come out solo here to do this in the context of the mix. And I'm thinking around 60 hertz will probably work. So I'm going to start by adjusting the intensity until it's adding more bottom, but it's not really clogging up the bass drum or making it sound distorted. And then we can play with the frequency afterwards.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out.
So let's have a quick listen to the references and see how they sound.
Open mind and running down to the riptide, taken away to the dark side.
So I think we've definitely gone a bit too low. It sounds like in this genre we probably want to avoid really heavy sub-bass content because it's not electronic music. It's meant to sound quite natural still. So let's pull this up a bit.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of reasons. It's so easy to love you.
So that's great. That's just adding a little bit more bottom, but it's not over the top. Now, this is what I find myself doing most frequently, is just tightening up that bottom end so that we have a more consistent low end, and the top end of this kick is going to still be dynamic. It's still going to sound natural, musical. So in this genre of music, it's great because I want there to be variation in the dynamics of the kick. I don't want it to be a really heavily compressed, like hard rock sounding kick, or I don't want it to be too consistent like electronic music. We still want dynamics in there, but now we've got that tight low end with the dynamics, which is great. You can do that on bass guitar too, and it's really, really effective. So that's technique number one. Now, the second way you can use this trick is to enhance presence on small speakers. So now that we've got this high kick channel, we can make sure this is going to cut through on laptop speakers, that kind of stuff, by adding some saturation and maybe a bit of EQ. And it really is that easy. So if we, again, in the context of the mix, add some saturation, just until the kick drum is poking out of the track a little bit more, but without sounding really distorted. So for that, you can use any saturation tool. I'm using FabFilter Saturn, but there's loads of 3 saturation tools out there. And because we've already got this on a separate channel, you don't even need a tone control because we're only going to be saturating everything above 200 Hertz anyway, so it's not going to affect the low end too much.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of reasons. It's so easy to love you. And when all the pages of our lives are turned.
So I'm going to turn this up a little bit more. Focus on the click of the kick drum. It starts to really poke out a lot more as soon as we bring this saturation in. So where the beater is hitting the click drum, focus on that.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of reasons. It's so easy.
Really brings it out. So I'm going to dial that back a bit until I'm happy with how much the kick is poking out.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of.
And you can do the same with EQ. So if we want to bring that beater out even more, we can just use the same EQ and just find where it is.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of reasons. It's so easy to love you.
So again, that just brings out that beater a little bit more. And then we can just volume balance the two until we've got enough presence in the mix, enough low end. And it's nice just to have those 2 faders there to be able to balance those 2 elements on different channels without having to focus on doing it all on one channel.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of reasons. It's so easy to love you.
And there we go. Pretty cool. Now you want to be careful that you don't focus so much on making sure that the kick and the bass cut through on small speakers that you neglect how the low end will sound on a bigger speaker system. Here we're kind of dabbling on that, but again, grab that low end cheat sheet because it will really help with that part and making sure that your mixes always sound great on bigger speaker systems too. Okay, so moving on now to the third technique, get creative with it. So now that we've got these split channels, we can start to use effects on each of them. So in a lot of indie folk music, there's actually reverb on the kick drum. Now we could try adding reverb to the low end part, but I already have some reverb here on the top end part just from where I copied it across earlier. So we're going to focus on that now, and we could even try adding some more interesting effects as well. So let's solo the kick drum. So this is with no reverb. This is with reverb on both. And this is with reverb only on the high channel. So one's not better than the other. Generally, you want to avoid using reverb on low-end parts like the bass and the kick because we want them to sound really tight. So in a lot of rock music, if you do want a bit of reverb on the kick, this is a great way to do it. In this context, I think it might actually sound good with a bit of reverb on both of them anyway. So I'm going to start by just bussing these together so that I don't have to keep mixing them separately if I want to add reverb. So now here we've just got an aux, which is our whole kick drum. So kick. And we can bring that next to these. So now if we do want to do anything on the entire kick drum, we want to add more EQ, anything like that, we can just do it on this channel because they're both going to that. And we just want to make sure this is then routed to our percussion bus. So let's try adding reverb, and I've just got a room reverb set up already to the whole kick drum.
It's so easy to love you.
Now let's compare that to only having it on the top end part.
Easy to love you. It's so easy. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of reasons.
So that's much subtler. It's adding space to the kick without making it sound too boomy. And then in comparison, this is with it on the low end channel.
Easy to love you. It's so easy.
So it's adding quite a lot of space, but it's also a bit boomy and a bit muddy. So I'm just going to flick through these a few times until I can decide which I prefer in this context.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of reasons. It's so easy to love you.
So I prefer it just on the high channel. It's subtler, it's adding space to the kick, it's creating that kind of more reverby sound that we expect to hear of this genre, but at the same time it's not adding mud or mess to the mix. Now beyond that, if you were doing this on a tom or something like that where you're trying to make it sound really big and epic, you could even try adding some flanging to it. You could get a bit more creative with it. We could try using some chorus to see how that sounds. And you could even start using automation, so we could create another bus just for this reverb. So we could create a whole new reverb and call this kick verb. And now we can just copy this across so that we've got that same reverb sound. But let's try adding some interesting stuff here. So we could just add some chorus. Chorus is a great way to just beef up your reverb buses and just get creative with it. Have some fun. Not everything has to be sterile and done properly when you're mixing. When it comes to effects, you can really, really get creative with it. So let's just solo this. Sounds pretty weird in solo, but let's see if we can get this to sound interesting in the mix.
Easy to love you. It's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of reasons. It's so easy to love you. And when all the pages of our lives are turned in all the words.
So it just sounds a little bit different. This is how the kick sounded with just normal reverb going to the room reverb bus. And this is how it sounds with this new reverb bus that's only applied to the high channel. Big difference. And in the mix,
it's so easy to love you. I would run out of ink trying to write a list of reasons. It's so easy to love you.
just makes the kick fill out that stereo spread a little bit more. I'm not sure if I'd leave that in, but feel free to experiment with this, give it a try, because I often find the funnest parts of mixing are just playing around with effects, seeing if you can get some really cool effect throws and spot effects and all that jazz. So there you go, the split processing trick. Use that to beef up your kick and your bass, to enhance presence on small speakers, or just to get really creative with effects. Of course, there's a lot more that goes into getting a great low end than just a simple trick like this. You really need to make sure the relationship between the kick and the bass is right. If you want that low end to be consistent and strong, then you need to think about way more than just this one trick. So make sure you go and download that low end cheat sheet that's going to run you through a bunch of other tips and techniques for getting the low end right every single time. And of course, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. So that's all from me. I'm Rob from Musician on a Mission, and remember, create regardless.